The piercing cries of my newborn daughter filled the sterile Chicago hospital room, cutting through the steady beep of monitors and the muffled voices of nurses. Sweat still clung to my skin under the thin gown as Fatima leaned close, her hand never leaving mine, her dark eyes steady with the kind of love that had carried us through years of doubt. Then the door swung open and my mother Eleanor stepped inside, her face a mask of frozen disapproval, the same expression she had worn the day she told me I was dead to her for loving a woman, and now here she stood uninvited on the day I gave birth through assisted reproduction, refusing even to glance at the tiny life I had fought so hard to bring into the world. I stared at her, unable to speak, the exhaustion from 18 hours of labor mixing with the old familiar ache of her rejection. Fatima squeezed my fingers harder, whispering, "Stay strong." But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw tightened, because she knew what this visit meant. Eleanor had sworn she had no lesbian daughter. The words still rang in my ears from that brutal phone call 2 years earlier when I first told her about the IVF plans. "You are throwing away everything I taught you," she had hissed before hanging up and blocking my number. Yet here she was, drawn by some twisted sense of duty, or maybe curiosity, after my sister Claire had leaked the news despite promising to stay out of it. The nurse placed Sophia in my arms, her tiny face scrunched and red, and for a moment the room felt suspended between joy and the storm I knew was coming. Flashback hit me hard as I rocked my daughter, the memory of the family dinner 10 years ago, when I came out at 24. We sat around the oak table in the suburban house outside Chicago where I grew up, the one with the white picket fence and the American flag on the porch. Dad had already passed, but Mom Eleanor ruled the house with her Bible studies and Sunday potlucks. Fatima sat beside me, then just my new girlfriend, her hand under the table for support. I said the words, "Mom, I am gay and I am in love with Fatima." The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Eleanor stood so fast her chair scraped the floor, her voice low and venomous. "If that is your choice, then I have no daughter. Get out of my house." The words sliced through me then, and they sliced again now as I held Sophia, wondering if bringing a child into this fractured world was the most selfish or the bravest thing I had ever done. Fatima had been my rock through it all. We met at a community health fair where she worked as a nurse and I was volunteering as a legal aid lawyer fighting for LGBTQ rights in the city. Her laugh was the first thing that pulled me in, warm and real against the coldness I had known at home. After the dissolution, we built our life together in a small apartment in Logan Square, the kind with exposed brick and noisy neighbors, but filled with our shared dreams. We talked for months about having a child, debating the ethics, the cost, the judgment we would face. I wanted to carry the baby myself, to feel that connection to life after so much rejection. Fatima supported me fully even when the hormone shots made me sick, and the donor selection felt clinical and cold. We chose a donor with similar features to mine, hoping Sophia would have my eyes, but the process tested us. Every ultrasound appointment I wondered if I was condemning my child to the same pain. I carried the whispers at family events that never came, the empty seat at holidays. Eleanor had not spoken to me since that phone call, but Claire, my younger sister, had tried to play peacemaker, at first sending texts about Mom missing me, then slowly pulling away as the family pressure mounted. Last month Claire had called crying, saying Mom found out about the pregnancy through a mutual friend and demanded she choose sides. "I am sorry, London, but I can't lose her too," Claire had whispered before the line went dead. That betrayal stung deeper than Mom's words, because Claire had once been my confidant, the one who sneaked me out to meet Fatima in high school. Now the family was split and I was left holding the pieces while my body prepared for birth. The cost of my choices piled up, the sleepless nights questioning if love was enough to shield Sophia from the world that still saw us as wrong. In the hospital room, Eleanor finally spoke, her voice tight with controlled rage. "This is what you chose over your family, a child without a father raised by 2 women. I told you I would not be part of this sin." Fatima stood then, her nurse instincts kicking in as she stepped between us. "This is not about sin, Eleanor, this is about love and a family we built when you walked away." I watched my mother's face flush, the lines around her eyes deepening with years of disappointment. She turned to leave but paused at the bassinet, her hand hovering as if drawn by some invisible force. The nurse adjusted my pillows, and for the first time I let the tears fall, not from pain but from the weight of every decision that led here, the trade-off of family for truth, the inner war between who I was raised to be and who I had become. The hours blurred as visitors came and went, coworkers from the law firm who offered cautious congratulations, knowing the rumors about my lifestyle had cost me a promotion last year. One colleague had pulled me aside months ago, saying clients might not trust a lesbian lawyer with family cases. I had smiled through it, but inside it burned the constant reminder that society still judged us even in progressive Chicago. Fatima handled the paperwork, her calm presence the anchor I needed while I recovered. Eleanor did not leave the hospital. Instead, she lingered in the waiting area, according to the nurse, a silent sentinel of disapproval. I wondered what moral battle raged in her mind, the devout woman who quoted scripture at every turn now faced with a grandchild born from what she called defiance. As night fell and the room quieted, Fatima curled beside me on the narrow bed, her head on my shoulder. "We did this together," she murmured. "No matter what she says, Sophia is ours and we will protect her." I nodded, but the doubt lingered deep in my chest, the fear that my awakening to my true self had caused too much the family I once knew, the acceptance I craved. Holding Sophia, I whispered promises to her tiny ear, promises to teach her strength and love without conditions. Yet Eleanor's presence outside the door hung like a shadow, the first confrontation of many I knew would come. The price of my choices was clear in every strained breath, every unspoken word. But so was the fire that kept me fighting for the life I had chosen. Morning light filtered through the blinds as Sophia stirred in her bassinet, her small fists waving like she already knew the tension in the air. I had barely slept, replaying the night before, when Eleanor had finally entered the room again, her steps hesitant, but determined. She did not touch the baby. Instead, she stood at the foot of the bed, reciting verses under her breath about the sanctity of traditional family. Fatima had gently asked her to leave, but my mother refused, claiming blood called to blood, even if the vessel was tainted. The words cut deep, reopening wounds from the years of silence. After I moved out, the holidays spent alone with Fatima, cooking simple meals and pretending the empty chairs did not matter. Flashback pulled me back to the first year after coming out, when I tried to reconcile. I drove to the old house with a bouquet of her favorite lilies, hoping for a crack in the wall she built. She opened the door just enough to see my face, then closed it, saying, "I have no daughter who lives in sin." That night Fatima held me as I cried, the betrayal fresh and raw. We decided then to build our own family away from the pain, but the pull of blood never faded. When we started the IVF process, it felt like defiance and healing all at once, the clinic visits filled with hope and paperwork that forced us to confront the legal gaps for same-sex parents in Illinois, even with protections. The pregnancy had been a roller coaster of emotions. Morning sickness hit hard in the first trimester, leaving me curled on the bathroom floor while Fatima brought ginger tea and rubbed my back. At work, I hid the bump under loose blouses until it became obvious and the whispers started. A senior partner had called me into his office expressing concern that my personal life might affect case outcomes. I defended myself, citing my record, but the damage was done, a subtle shift in assignments that cost me billable hours and self-respect. Fatima faced similar bias at the hospital, where a few colleagues avoided her shifts after learning about us. One nurse even asked if she was sure about raising a child in that environment, as if our love was a contagion. Eleanor had tried indirect pressure through distant relatives, sending messages about prayer groups and intervention programs. Claire had forwarded one email, her own conflict clear in the attached note, "Sorry sis, but mom won't stop." That betrayal deepened the rift, Claire choosing the path of least resistance to keep her own family intact, her husband and kids still welcome at Sunday dinners. I confronted her over the phone, the conversation turning heated as I accused her of picking sides. "You don't understand London," she had sobbed. "Mom says if I support you I am enabling sin." The moral dilemma tore at me. Was my truth worth fracturing the family further, or was silence the greater sin? As the pregnancy progressed, we attended support groups for queer parents, the stories there both inspiring and cautionary. One couple shared how their families eventually came around after the baby arrived, another warned of permanent estrangement. I weighed the risks every night, lying awake beside Fatima, her hand on my growing belly. Was I selfish for wanting this child when the world and my own mother might reject her? Fatima reassured me with quiet strength, reminding me that love was the foundation, not approval. Yet the inner conflict raged, the little girl inside me still craving mom's hug, the woman I had become refusing to bend. In the hospital that second day, Eleanor returned with a small bag of baby clothes, neutral colors, no cards or notes. She set it down without a word, her eyes avoiding mine. I asked why she came, if she hated my choices. "Because you are still my blood," she replied, her voice cracking for the first time. "But I cannot condone this." Fatima stepped forward, her voice steady. "Then why stay, Eleanor? The baby needs peace, not judgment." My mother looked at Sophia, then turned away, the internal struggle visible in her clenched fists. The confrontation left me drained, the emotional cost of her presence heavier than the physical recovery. Later that afternoon, a social worker stopped by to discuss legal paperwork for Fatima as co-parent. The process felt clinical but necessary in a society that still questioned our rights. I signed the forms with a heavy heart, knowing that without them Sophia could face challenges if something happened to me. Fatima held my hand through it, all her quiet tears mirroring my own. We had traded the simplicity of traditional paths for this complicated, beautiful reality, and the price showed in every guarded conversation, every wary glance from strangers. As evening approached, Eleanor lingered in the hallway according to the nurse. I wondered what battle she fought between her faith and the pull of new life. The day had stretched my resolve thin, the hook of her rejection still embedded deep. Yet holding Sophia, I felt a spark of defiance, the decision to love openly despite the cost, the awakening that family was not given but forged. The narrative of my life continued to unfold, one tense moment at a time, the stakes rising with every breath my daughter took. The discharge papers arrived on the third day, and with them came a new wave of reality as we prepared to bring Sophia home to our apartment, the one we had painted soft yellows in anticipation. Eleanor had not left the hospital. Instead, she followed us to the car, her presence a silent accusation. Fatima loaded the bags while I cradled Sophia in the carrier, my arms aching from the effort. "Mom, can we talk?" I asked one last time before the doors closed. She shook her head, the lines on her face deeper than I remembered. "There is nothing to say, London. You made your bed." The car pulled away, leaving her standing on the curb, the image burning into my mind, the family pressure manifesting in physical distance. Back home, the apartment felt both sanctuary and battlefield. Fatima arranged the nursery with the gifts from friends, the ones who had stuck by us through the years. My inner turmoil intensified as I rocked Sophia at night, questioning every choice, the moral weight of bringing a child into a world that might mirror my mother's rejection. Was it fair to Sophia to grow up knowing her grandmother saw her existence as wrong? Fatima sensed my doubts, and we talked late into the night, her voice a balm. "We cannot control others, London, but we control the love we give." Yet the doubt lingered, the trade-off of authenticity for peace ever present. Work called sooner than expected, a case involving a discrimination suit that felt too close to home. I returned part-time, leaving Sophia with Fatima, who had taken extended leave. The office atmosphere was polite but strained, colleagues avoiding eye contact after hearing about the birth. One associate had cornered me in the break room, asking how I managed the lifestyle with a baby, as if it were a burden rather than a joy. I defended our family, but the words tasted bitter, the societal prejudice chipping away at my confidence. At home, Fatima shared her own stories from the hospital, where a doctor had questioned her commitment to non-traditional parenting. The parallel struggles bonded us deeper, but the emotional cost mounted, the constant vigilance against judgment. Claire reached out unexpectedly a week after discharge, her text hesitant. "Mom is struggling, London, she misses you but won't admit it." I replied with anger at first, accusing her of playing both sides again, the betrayal fresh. She called then, her voice breaking as she described Eleanor's late-night prayers and the family gatherings where my name was avoided. I felt the pull of old loyalty but stood firm. "Tell her Sophia is thriving despite everything." The conversation ended in tears on both ends, the moral dilemma clear. Was reconciliation worth compromising my truth, or was protecting my family the greater good? The weeks blurred into a rhythm of feedings and doctor's visits, each one a reminder of the life we built. Eleanor sent a single card through Claire, no message, just a check for medical bills, the gesture laced with conditions. I returned it, the act a small victory in asserting boundaries, but it hurt the child in me still yearning for unconditional love. Fatima and I celebrated small wins, Sophia's first smile, the way she gripped our fingers, but the shadow of family rejection loomed. Inner conflict peaked during a sleepless night when Sophia fussed, and I wondered aloud if I had doomed her to repeat my pain. Fatima pulled me close, her embrace the anchor reminding me of the awakening that came from choosing love over fear. Social events tested us further, a neighborhood block party where neighbors asked about the father, and I explained with practiced calm. Some smiled, others shifted uncomfortably, the prejudice subtle but real. I paid the price in lost connections but gained strength in Fatima's pride. The narrative built toward greater tension, the decisions of the past colliding with the present, the cost measured in quiet moments of doubt and fierce protection. Months passed and Sophia grew, her first teeth emerging as we navigated the new normal. Eleanor had not visited, but Claire updated us sporadically, her own family strained by the divide. The betrayal cut deeper when I learned Claire had shared details of our IVF journey with church friends, leading to prayer chains aimed at our conversion. I confronted her in a heated phone call, the words flying fast. How could you, Claire, after everything? She defended herself, saying it was for Mom's sake, but the damage was done, the social circle now buzzing with judgment. The climax approached when Eleanor called unexpectedly, her voice strained. I want to see the child. No conditions. I agreed reluctantly, Fatima beside me for support, the meeting set for a neutral park near our home. The day arrived, crisp autumn air carrying the scent of change. Eleanor arrived alone, her coat buttoned tight against the wind. Sophia sat in her stroller, babbling happily, reaching for leaves. My mother watched from a distance, her face a battlefield of emotion. Fatima encouraged her closer, the tension thick as fog. As Sophia played on a blanket, Eleanor knelt slowly, her hand trembling as she touched the soft hair. The moment stretched, then Sophia looked up, her small voice clear for the first time, forming sounds that echoed grandma in the way only a mother's heart could interpret. Eleanor froze, her body rigid, the color draining from her face as the word hung in the air. I have no words, she whispered, but the tears that followed told the story of awakening clashing with years of conviction. The confrontation escalated as she stood accusing me of manipulation. But her eyes betrayed the crack in her armor, the unexpected consequence of love breaking through prejudice. We left the park in silence, the emotional cost evident in Eleanor's slumped shoulders, my own heart pounding with the weight of what had just happened. Fatima drove us home, her hand on my knee, the support unwavering. That night we talked about the price each of us paid, the betrayals, the trade-offs, the inner wars that defined us. The story continued to unfold, the tension rising toward resolution or further fracture, the choices before us heavy with consequence. The park encounter changed everything, yet nothing at once. Eleanor began calling weekly, her conversations short and guarded but persistent. She asked about Sophia's milestones, the moral dilemma clear in her hesitation to fully embrace us. Claire tried to mediate again, her betrayal now mixed with regret as she saw the toll on Mom. I met her for coffee, the discussion turning to family legacy and the right path. You chose your way, she said, but Mom is suffering. The words ignited old anger, the confrontation raw as I listed the years of silence, the cost to my mental health, the strength it took to build our family alone. Fatima faced her own battles at work, a promotion delayed due to unspoken bias, the decision to speak up costing her relationships with colleagues. We supported each other through late-night talks, the romantic bond deepening amid the drama, the happy moments in the nursery where we held Sophia together, reminding us why we fought. The awakening came gradually for all of us, the realization that love demanded sacrifice but prejudice demanded even more. Eleanor visited the apartment for the first time, her steps tentative as she held Sophia, the grandma moment repeating in small ways, the babble now clear. Yet conditions lingered, she suggested baptism and church attendance, the clash of values sparking new confrontations. I refused, standing firm, the price of compromise too high. The family pressure mounted through relatives who sided with her, the social prejudice extending to playdates and school choices we anticipated. Inner conflicts raged as I questioned if my rejection of her terms mirrored her rejection of me, the moral symmetry troubling. Fatima reminded me of the progress, the slow thaw, but the pain remained, the trade-off of peace for authenticity. The final confrontation came at Sophia's first birthday party. The apartment filled with chosen family, and a few reluctant relatives. Eleanor arrived with a gift, her face softer but resolve intact. As Sophia toddled toward her, calling Grandma, clearly the room fell silent, the unexpected joy clashing with old wounds. Eleanor lifted, her tears flowing as she whispered words of partial acceptance, but the conditions followed in private. I cannot fully bless this London, but I cannot lose you either. The discussion turned heated in the kitchen, the betrayals laid bare Claire's role, the years of hurt, the societal and personal costs. Fatima stood beside me, her presence the embodiment of the love that triumphed. We traded accusations and truths, the psychological depth revealing each woman's awakening, Eleanor to the limits of her faith, me to the limits of forgiveness. The decisions hung heavy, the price paid in fractured relationships and hard-won bonds. As the party ended, Eleanor left with a hug that felt like truce but not resolution. Holding Fatima and Sophia that night, I reflected on the journey, the drama, the inner storms, the social battles. Every character had paid dearly for their choices, the right and wrong blurred in the complexity of love and belief. Was the mother's rejection justified by her deeply held values, or was turning away from her daughter and grandchild the greater moral failing in a world that demands compassion above all?